Councillor Kieran Williams, Leader of the Council and Chair of this meeting. I'd like to welcome all of you to this virtual meeting of Southwark's Cabinet. The first thing I'll do is just ask all of our Cabinet members who are present to introduce themselves, who are the voting members of this committee. So I'll go round in order. Jasmine, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Thank you, Leader. I am Councillor Jasmine Ali. I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council, and I'm also the Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Jasmine. So, Evelyn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Councillor Evelyn Okota. I'm the Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Public Health.
And Helen. Alice.
Morning, I'm Councillor Alice MacDonald, Cabinet Member for Communities and Equalities.
Rebecca.
Morning, I'm Councillor Rebecca Leroux. I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources.
Leo.
Morning all, I'm Councillor Leo Pollack. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing.
Catherine.
Hey everybody, I'm Councillor Catherine Rose and I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment.
And transport.
Thank you. We also have with us today Eleanor Kelly as Chief Executive of the Council and Doreen Foster-Brown as our Director of Law and Democracy. We'll have other Council officers joining the meeting throughout this course. Before please only unmute yourself when I invite you to join the conversation during the course of the meeting. Can I say to all of those voting members, so Cabinet members, if you have any problems with your connection, then please notify me straight away. I will be checking throughout the meeting to make sure people are connected. All of our Southwark Council meetings can be filmed. Today we're having problems with the live streaming, as you heard earlier on, but we do accept filming in general. Do we have any apologies today? We've got a full complement of Cabinet members, so I think not. We have some items that have been brought to us urgently today. So they're items 9, the council tax base for 2021-22. Item 10, the policy and resources strategy for 2021-22. And item 20, response to the Housing Scrutiny Commission report on housing repairs. I will be accepting all 3 of those urgent items. I've not had any notices. Sorry, do we have any notices of declarations of interest in today's meeting at all? No. I've not had any notice of about our
Chair.
Items that we've. Yes, sorry, Leo.
Just a quick question on item, I think 13, which is the SIL allocations. There's obviously lots of projects all over the borough, some of which will be near where we live. One of them, even though I'm trying to move house at the minute, is across the road from where I live. So I don't know whether the advice would be that I recuse myself from that item.
So Doreen or Norman, do we have any advice on that one?
Councillor Pollack, can I just come back to you on that in a very short moment, please? Because I probably do need to take some further information from you on that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll make sure we cover that before we get to that item on the agenda, Leo. So I've not had any notice of intentions on our items that we've got in closed business today. So that's where we have items that are confidential for a number of reasons, such as the amount of money council's paying for land, and there's an opportunity for people to ask in advance questions on that, why we are taking them as closed business. I haven't had any such representations. We don't have any public questions that were submitted today, so that will take us on to the minutes. I have a couple of changes that I've been asked that I'm happy to make to the minutes. Are there any other items on the minutes that people want to make corrections to before I get to mine? No, in that case, let me just run through mine. So on page 5, under Clean Air for Dulwich, in the first paragraph under that section, I'd like to just insert some text. So it reads, representatives from the community within the streets covered by the street space measures in Dulwich Village and East Dulwich. Then after that, insert, including the charter school East Dulwich and Herne Hill Safe Routes to School, a local business, and East Dulwich Station Healthy Streets, and then carry on as it was with addressed cabinet. Again on page 5 under Clean Air for Dulwich, under the second paragraph under that, changing this one. So it starts with the line, the deputation outlined a number of concerns relating to road danger. Then delete the rest of that paragraph and replace it with, and the positives gained from healthy streets, accessible neighbourhoods and safety for children. It was noted that the measures implemented should be reviewed not only in relation to reductions in pollution, but also in terms of improving safety of vulnerable groups. And those changes are just because the deputation that came back to say that we hadn't quite captured the gist of what they were saying in the minutes, and they were keen to be noted the full range of people that were in their deputation. And then there's one further change on under page 4, under item 8, where it says the resolved that the petition from the local residents relating to a request to reverse road closures be received. It's been pointed out to me that the petition indeed was from local residents, but also from people across London. So if we could just add in the words, resolve that the petition from local, and then add in and London-wide residents relating to, and carry on as it was. So with those changes, are we happy to amend the minutes?
Great.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll email a copy of those across to constitutional officers so they don't have to note them all down. Okay. Right. So again, we've had no deputation requests today. But before we get into the main agenda, I just wanted to say a couple of words about where we are with COVID in the borough. Southwark currently has one of the lowest rates of COVID infections in London, and that's fantastic news, and is down to the hard work of everybody in our borough, following the rules, maintaining distance, and making those hard choices about how much time you spend with your family and friends, and doing very difficult things. However, all of the news you'll be seeing in the headlines, all of the briefings I'm getting tell us that London is also only just made it into tier 2 restrictions last time round, and there is a real risk that rates, if we don't all carry on following the rules and being safe, that London will go back into tier 3 in the near future. I think we've all seen and been worried by the pictures of people shopping in central London in overcrowded streets, many people without masks, unable to maintain distance. And so I just really encourage everybody to carry on following the rules. It's fantastic news that we now have vaccines arriving. The first 975 have arrived in Southwark at our local hospital. For those that are wondering if they can have theirs, there's only a limited number at this point, and the NHS will be directly contacting those people who are eligible. I'm told in the first instance that will be people who are in hospital in any case who are over 80 and therefore eligible. It will be care home staff, and it will also be a small number of the particularly vulnerable NHS staff as well. So that's the beginning of the process. Small numbers now. It will take some time for the volume of vaccine to come out so bigger groups can be eligible. But great to have the vaccine, but clearly that doesn't mean that we still need to keep being safe and maintaining distance. And I just want to put that message across, and I encourage everybody who's in this call, cabinet members and everyone else, to keep passing that message on to your friends and families. Otherwise, there continues to be a future, and of course that we lose lives, and that would be such a tragedy at this point when we're so close to being able to vaccinate the whole population. So with that comment and that plea to you all, I shall move on to the agenda. The first item we have is our school standards report, and I shall hand over to Jasmine to introduce it.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Before I start, I just wanted to say that I have two officers with me. Obviously, Nina, our amazing director, who's known to everyone, but we've also got Kevin Morris, and I think it's his first cabinet. He's our new Director of Learning and Achievement. Okay, so the school standard report marks an important landmark in our calendar, as you know. I think we're on our 8th now, and every year we've gone from strength to strength. And last year, you'll remember that I told you we were at 94% of good and outstanding schools, and we already had plans in place to work with the remaining 5 to get stronger. So this year, it's not the same report, as you can see. It's not as bulky and it's not as formal, because we're not looking at formal results, but we are looking at our performance in schools. We're looking more at well-being and how we have worked, you know, with our pupils and their families and each other during this terrible pandemic. Okay, so you know the story. Since March, the schools have been the 4th emergency services. They remained open all the time. They remained open for vulnerable children and of course the children of our key workers. Now, I mean, basically at the same time, they've had to deal with government's chaotic school plans, shambolic test and trace, and the exam fiasco. And throughout all of this, the schools have been vigilant and remaining to keep our pupils safe. Okay, this report gives us the opportunity to have a huge vote of thanks for our schools, and it also gives us the opportunity as cabinet members to thank the people on the call. I've mentioned Kevin and Nina, also our amazing staff in the early help and our public health colleagues. You know, so basically it's been a joint effort across the council to work with schools. The attached report also gives a nod to the amazing work which was led by Councillor Situ and Councillor Okoto on Southwark Stands Together. You'll remember during that listening event, we spoke to a lot of pupils and they told us a lot of things on education. They're in this report, and one of the things that they said is that we must continue to put pressure on government so that our curriculum, their curriculum, reflects the diversity of the pupils in the borough. Okay, I'm nearly there now, Leader. In September, the schools were open to all, and it was tremendous to see the majority of our students going back. The longer term work in terms of catch up, narrowing any attainment gaps that have happened as a result of the pandemic, as you can imagine, that work has already begun, and we're in the very good hands of Nina and of course our newest recruit Kevin. So I'll invite them to see if they have anything to add, but that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Kevin and Nina, would you like to add anything?
I think Kevin, do you want to go first?
Okay, so I'll just say something. Yeah, thanks, Jasmine, for that. Really helpful. Just to add, really, for everyone, that it was an unusual year last summer because, as people know, there were no public exams as such in the traditional sense of the word. In secondary, all of the results were based on teacher assessment, but that was the same for everyone across the country. So we still held up really well. We're still outperforming our statistical neighbours, which is good news. And then in primary, of course, there was no standard assessment task, no SATs for anyone. So there's no primary data in the report. We do know that public exams returning this summer for both primary and secondary. So we should be interested to see how that plays out, given there are some enormous challenges around that. In terms of this report, it's a good news story. Southwark's performing very well, and those schools that are not quite there on the good and outstanding Ofsted criteria, there are 5 of them, were working very hard so that when Ofsted returns to full inspection, they will be moving towards good or outstanding in the very near future. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Just briefly, thank you, Jasmine, for that great introduction to the report. I think you've really covered the relevant points. I'd just like to say a thank you to my teams who have worked tremendously dedicated during this last 10 months. So Kieran, thank you for your words at the beginning. I mean, it's been challenging for everybody on the call and everybody that works across the council and with our services and for our residents. So I'd just like to say that I know our schools are very, very appreciative everything that we're doing collectively as officers and members to keep our schools open and to keep our families and children afloat. So I think the report has tried to capture some of that. Thank you, Kevin, for your words there, and thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Jasmine, Kevin and Nina. I mean, normally this report is an opportunity when we invite some of the representatives of our schools to come along and we have the opportunity to thank them directly for the support they're doing. I think we all know that this year has been an incredible pressure on schools, and it's fantastic to have such great schools in Southwark, and I know they've absolutely pulled the stops out to get our children and young people through this year, and are continuing to do so, and hence are not here today because of the pressure they're under. But I think if we can formally all put on record our thanks for everything all of our schools have done over the last year in this incredibly difficult year, and our commitment to work with those schools over the coming year to help continue to close the gap in educational attainment, and particularly those kids who have sadly fallen behind in a year that we know when it's been incredibly difficult to get education going for children across our borough. So our thanks to the schools, to your team as well, Nina, for your role in that, for all of your team. So I have two questions. First, Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. And just to echo both Councillor Williams and Councillor Ali's point in terms of thanking both schools, head teachers and teachers for all of their work over the last year. And of course, Nina, and welcome aboard, Kevin, as well. Three very, very quick points. So, you know, Councillor Ali quite rightly highlighted the work in terms of Southwark Stands Together, and welcome all of the work in terms of engagement, and welcome the fact that that work will be taken forward. Particularly wanted to highlight the work of Southwark Scholars as well, which is highlighted in the report. They've played a phenomenal role, both in respect of Southwark Stands Together, but also increasingly in my role in climate emergency, I've seen a number of great ideas from Southwark Scholars as well. So really want to commend them for that. And then the final thing is that in previous years, you know, certainly, Nina, when you presented this report, there has been a question in terms of engagement with some schools, and some schools have been better than others. So I wanted to get a sense of, has that strengthened? Have some schools remained a challenge to have that engagement with moving forward?
I think during this last 10 months, everyone's really pulled together. You know, no one has been unaffected by COVID, and I think actually, if anything, it's brought our schools closer together, and they've really engaged with, communicated with us, particularly in that during that first lockdown. We were the unifying element in keeping those schools open and sharing the good practice, and keeping morale up, and keeping people buoyant, and making sure that, you know, our children are in the right place, and the schools really greatly appreciated that. So much a very good, you know, that our relationship with our secondaries is strengthening on many fronts. Of course, there are still elements, and I see Councillor Rose is very interested in this particular element. Of course, there are schools that will have their own practices and their own way of admissions and the way they do things, and they will continue to do that because that they are entitled to do that. But I think what the last 10 months has demonstrated to our schools is just how critical we are to how they function individually and together.
Thanks, Nina. I've got two more questions. I'll take both and then I'll come back to the answers. Steph.
Thank you, and thanks Jasmine and Nina and Kevin. It's a really good report, and in very difficult circumstances, to actually have a body of report like this, given the year we've had, it's really great. And I also want to pass on my thanks to all the teaching staff and all the staff in our schools. I suppose the question I want to ask is, obviously we're still in the pandemic, and we're seeing instances in schools where whole year groups or certain classes are having to still be sent home for 2 weeks because of an outbreak of COVID in a year group within a bubble as well. I suppose my worry is that we will, you know, how that would affect the attainment gap, because as much as you can do home learning, and I think for secondary schools it's a little bit different because there are online lessons and there's less supervision from parents needed, but the impact on primary schools, and then the need for parents themselves who are maybe working from home or are back to work to then take that time out to be able to ensure that their children are doing their lessons at home. I'm just wondering, are we seeing sort of an impact on that, or when will we be at a stage where we can see what the impact of stop-start sort of self-isolations is having on the attainment gap as well?
Let me take the question, Nina, and then we'll come back. So Evelyn was the second one.
Want to say that, or shall I?
So
I'll ask our question first.
I'm going to take the questions first.
Oh, right, okay.
Evelyn,
Okay, fine.
Evelyn.
Thank you. I echo my thanks also to the education team and the teachers, and for helping parents like myself keep sane and being able to kind of concentrate on work. So a big thank you on that. I also commend the education team embracing the Southwark Stand Together recommendations. I'm really, in supportive of that, and any way I can help you in pushing that forward, I will do so. I think my question is about NEETs, and I believe I asked you a question previously on this, but I wasn't able to come back. And I know, especially those whose activity is unknown, which is 6.4%. I think everyone knows that youth disengagement, how difficult that can be and the repercussions of that. And I know the report talks about enhancing education and making coordination and making sure that data sharing is increased. But have we thought about things like, for example, pre-16 tracking, making sure that our pre-16 tracking is robust enough, and also identifying individuals that may be, I would say, at risk of probably disengaging, and putting in more robust supports at that point. I'm really keen on us really homing in on this aspect. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
And actually, I'll add one more question myself. So when Jasmine and I met recently with the head teachers, we had a good discussion about them claiming the additional funding to cover COVID costs. It would be helpful to know to what extent those costs are being covered by government as they're completing those returns. So Jasmine, if you want to start us off perhaps, and then if you want to point us to Nina and Kevin to respond as well to those points. Okay,
I mean, the technical questions, I think Kevin and Nina would be better to answer, but I just wanted to say on the NEET question, Councillor Koto, that I've already set up a task and finish group on school inclusion. So we will be looking at, all of the recommendations that you've made, the ones that Councillor Babudu, but also we'll be opening that so that there will be no stone unturned really. So, we are absolutely on that, and I want to assure you of that. I mean, basically, before I hand over to the experts, I do think, the blended learning, from what I've seen as a parent as well, I think that basically schools are working much more smarter on their offer of blended learning, as far as I can see anyway. I'll hand over to Nina and Kevin, if I may. Thanks.
I'll just pick up on your last question, Kieran, around the COVID money, because I think that's quite an important one. So, I think it's fair to say that a number of schools have still not received that COVID money from the DfE. We have chased and chased and chased, and we continue to chase via the regional schools. Apparently, it's sitting around the Chancellor's inbox, but there are still a number of schools that haven't had that money. So that is a big issue for our schools, but we are working as far, and if there's anything that councillors can help to support that, be very grateful on that front. On the other bit around catch-up and primary children falling behind, we've had an Ofsted report done across the country, which has kind of begun to pull some of those threads together. So at a local level, people are reporting, yeah, there are some gaps, and teachers are looking at how they're going to address those gaps with some interventions and booster classes and various other activities. And nationally, we know that the most disadvantaged children have got the most gaps, and COVID has affected them the most. We know that. So there is a national kind of concern, if you want, around the gap between those that are more advantaged than our disadvantaged counterparts. And I think it's fair to say that the head teachers in Southwark are really acutely aware of this and are doing everything they possibly can. And we are doing, as a council, we're doing a lot around online learning. We've got a lot of plans around the IT and developing that in a more strategic way, and you'll hear more about that in due course over the next couple of terms. So Nina, I don't know if you want to add something. Just
to top up those couple of points. So so schools haven't, not all schools have received the funding from the first round of COVID applications, and now the second round has been announced as well. So schools can apply again for the next round of funding. Does it cover their costs? I think it depends on the size of the school and the level of costs they've had. It varies from school to school. So I've just had a couple of nursery schools saying this is how much it's cost us, and it's been in the region of about £18,000. I don't think they will recover that from the COVID fund, because there are limits on the size of the school as to how much they can recover. So this is really impacting, you know, there may be some secondary schools who can claim a little bit more and a bit more flex and will be able to manage, but it is really going to put some of our schools in some real difficulty. And there is very little coming out of the department or any other quarter about how nationally schools are going to be supported. It affects all types of schools right across the country. So that's just a little bit more on the COVID funding, and around the attainment. Councillor Crine, you know, it really rather depends on how long the disruption continues as to when we can start levelling out as to, you know, where the attainment gaps are and when they've stopped. So you'll have heard already nationally the announcements around GCSE and A-level examinations next year, and how students will be informed of the topics that are going to be covered in those exams. That's the DfE's way of, I think, trying to mitigate some of those gaps and to give students a bit more of a chance to perform. So we're not hearing very much yet on the testing and assessment arrangements around early years and Key Stage 1 and 2, but we'll be sure to keep Jasmine informed about that. In terms of the NEETs, Councillor Cotto, you're absolutely right. We had a bit of a reshape around our team that works with NEETs and tracking NEETs, and certainly when we had the review of that team, the area that we very, very much focus on is we need to get better at the tracking. And we are getting better at the tracking, and the relationship with our secondary schools is critical to that. That has improved, that's improving. So yes, knowing who those young, the 16-year-olds are and their destinations, absolutely, that's the critical piece of work around that. And what's really great about those who are most vulnerable in that cohort is that our family early help team know who they are. So we know who these youngsters are. The tricky bit is knowing where they end up, because we have about 60 to 70% of our 16 plus who, if they leave school, they move, their further education or higher education is outside of the borough. So we are trying, I mean, COVID got in the way of it, but we were at the point where we were trying to have some data sharing agreements, but those young people can go far and wide. So that's the tricky bit about where they end up. So we know who they are. It's about trying to close that circle.
Thank you very much. I mean, again, let's put on record our thanks for this report. And Jasmine, I think if you and I agreed that we would write, didn't we, to all of the schools to thank them for the work that they've done over this year. I mean, in any year, I think, you know, Southwark schools have gone on an exceptional journey of improvement over the last years, but to continue to perform so well in this current climate, have done so much for our children and young people, is a huge achievement. So we'll do that. Kevin, you asked about raising the concerns about schools that haven't received their funding, and indeed those schools that Nina, you highlighted, are perhaps not getting enough funding to cover their costs, or definitely not. So Jasmine, let us do that as well politically alongside the work you're doing. So thank you very much for the item. Thank you very much to your teams and to all of our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cabinet were asked to note that report, so if we can all agree that. Agreed?
Agreed.
And I should take us on to the next report. So this is the council tax base for 2021-22. Rebecca, would you like to introduce that one?
Yeah, thank you, Kieran. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on this report because there are other reports that would be good to spend more time on later. But this report basically just sets out our assumption on collection rates for the council tax base for next year, which remains unchanged at 97.2%. We are also confirming our continuation of the local discretionary increase in the council tax premium on long-term empty homes. So those are going to be maintained at 100% for dwellings which are empty for 2 years and less than 5, 200% for dwellings that are empty for at least 5 years but less than 10, and 300% for dwellings that are empty for at least 10 years. And we think that's particularly important, especially when there are so many people within the borough that we need to be providing homes for, and this seems like a sensible way for us to be able to ensure that as many homes as possible are being occupied. We are also confirming that there will be no significant changes to the council tax reduction scheme for 21-22. We've obviously seen a huge increase in the number of people who are coming to us and struggling to make payments because of COVID-19 and the impact that that is having, and we are really keen to be able to ensure that we can protect those individuals that need it most next year as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. Do we have any Jasmine? I think, is that a new hand? No, that's an old one. So I think that's a relatively straightforward report, obviously something we do every year. Are people happy to agree the report? Agreed?
Agreed.
Great. Thank you very much. So let's take us on to the next report, which is clearly one of the biggest reports that we agree each year, our policy and resources strategy for the coming year ahead. Importantly to say, although this report has come late and urgent to us today, it's because it's the first opportunity we've had to put a budget into the public domain. And this is not a decision we're making today, that will be made next year at Council Assembly. But it is, as Rebecca I'm sure will outline in a moment, another year of austerity we're facing, and any suggestion that we're seeing nationally that austerity for councils is over is certainly not what's happening in Southwark or indeed across councils across the country. We're having to make hard choices, which feels the wrong decision for the government to be making in a year when councils have had to step up to provide so much support for our communities. But Rebecca, if you'd like to talk us through what we're presenting here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Kieran. And I've got a kind of a bit of a long introduction, but I think it's some useful background and context as to what we're setting out here. So as Councillor Williams has said, this is the first opportunity for us to bring our draft budget proposals for 21-22. And because of where the timings fall, we are going to look to publish an updated version of this for January's cabinet meeting, which will allow us to be able to have an updated version for the overview and scrutiny meeting, which takes place at the end of January 2021. It should also be noted that we're not publishing any proposals here around public health, which has a separate ring-fence budget, and what we've done this year is separate the two budgets out, so the general fund and the public health budget, so that it's much clearer about where we are making savings and where we are allocating money. So we obviously started much earlier this year with a sizable budget gap that we were working towards, and on our kind of worst case estimates, we were looking at a budget gap of around £26 million. This was obviously severely made much worse by COVID-19 and the in-year spending that we've had to make this year. So we've faced huge additional costs through our direct interventions to support communities. We've seen planned savings having to be delayed or cancelled, and there are really significant pressures from lost income through fees and charges that we are seeing. That's obviously also had an impact on our tax collection for both council tax and business rates. We've received a sizable amount of support from national government, but there remains an in-year budget gap this year, and we don't expect all of these problems to go away next year, which will have some really significant impacts on what we are able to spend, and therefore where we will have to make savings next year as well. It has been a tricky process to navigate this year because once again, whilst we saw the government announce that local government core spending power is going to increase, there's little in the way of new money from government apart from through council tax increases and the social care precept, which obviously has a huge knock-on impact because it means that we are setting out a proposal here to increase our council tax by 4.99%, which will hit some of the most vulnerable people in the borough. There is also the announcement of a public sector pay freeze, which we are particularly unhappy about. and we will be continuing to lobby government to say that we need to be able to pay our workers and some of those who have helped most during this crisis, and reward them through a pay rise. So in terms of what we've set out in this report, we have set out just short of £13.5 million worth of savings, which has been achieved through combinations of efficiencies and other savings. We'll obviously be consulting with staff and affected residents and other stakeholders as part of this process, and by no means is this all set in stone. What we can see from this report is that there remains a budget gap of just over £9.5 million. And that is something that we will be working to close in the coming weeks and months. We haven't had the provisional local government finance settlement. We expect that before the 17th of December, but as we know from previous years, government like running it to the very last moment, and we might not get that until much nearer Christmas. But we hope that therefore we will be in a much better position in January to understand exactly the size of the gap that we are looking to close. Cabinet members have done a huge amount of work to date to bring proposals that you will find in the appendices that accompany this report, but we will be going away and having a further series of meetings ahead of Christmas where we will be considering new proposals which will factor into that January report, and we hope to be in a position to therefore provide in January a budget with an even smaller proposed budget gap.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I know both officers across the council, cabinet members, and indeed all members of our Labour group have spent a huge amount of time looking through these proposals to look at what the best possible ways we are to make the money we spend on behalf of Southwark residents go as far as possible, and to save money in ways that are going to have the least possible negative impacts on our residents. But as I say, we continue, and as you said, Rebecca, we continue to face austerity coming out of government at a time when it's absolutely the wrong thing to be doing for our communities. So I've got Helen first. Sorry, before I come to you, Helen, Duncan, is there anything you want to add at this point?
Thanks, Kieran. No, other than to reiterate your thanks to colleagues for all of the hard work they put into the work they'll be putting in over Christmas to get this budget balanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Helen.
Just really to underline the point that Rebecca made about the inadequacy of the government's spending review, and particularly in the areas of adult social care and homelessness, which are two areas under my portfolio and which are listed as big budget pressures within the report. On social care, I think it was really outrageous, particularly given the context of COVID, that all the government did was to essentially pass that financial burden on to local authorities through the raising of council tax and through the social care precept. So we still have no long-term sustainable funding for adult social care. And despite that, we are committed as a council to improving quality standards across social care through the continued delivery of the ethical care charter, and also bringing forward the residential care charter, but that is going to come at a cost. And on homelessness, we actually saw things going backwards. So yes, a financial commitment from MHCLG to tackle homelessness, coupled with a freeze in the local housing allowance, which will make it even harder for residents to secure private rented accommodation in the borough. So I just wanted to underline those points, and we will continue over the coming months, not just to work on the budget that we have to present as a local authority, but also to lobby and to campaign against some of the inadequacies that we see in the central government settlement. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Alice.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the overview. And obviously it's incredibly tough time for our communities and for us as a council. I guess I just wanted to reinforce the points around the equalities impact assessment. And I know cabinet members and officers have been conducting those as we go along. And just, I think as referenced in the report, the importance of having the cumulative analysis of the decisions early in the new year. And again, I guess it is to reinforce that it's a continual process of assessing the impacts on our communities across the piece, and importantly, as well as engaging all the residents, different stakeholder groups, which I know that we will all be doing in our respective areas. So I don't know if there's anything else you could add on that. And then I just in the report, there's just a mention of reserves and our approach to reserves. And it would be good if either you or Duncan could just talk a little bit about what our approach is to reserves within this policy. Thanks.
Thanks, Alice. Rebecca and Duncan, would you like to come back on those points?
Duncan, do you want to come back on them rather than?
Shall I start on reserves first of all? So setting the context, Southwark is in the bottom quartile of holding reserves in London and is one of the larger London councils. So no one should be under any illusions that we're rich in reserves, which clearly once you use, they're gone and they don't come back. However, we had made some provision originally for use of reserves in next year's budget when we were in a much worse position in the Rebecca referred to. The situation has improved and those reserves would remain available if we can't balance the budget. But the reserve issue really is that if we use reserves this year, we've got to find equivalent savings the year after and the year after that. So it's just pushing the can down the road, but that's entirely appropriate, I think, if necessary, given the coded in the summer. However, when you're having to make cuts in the context of austerity, there is bound to be some unfortunate fallout from that. But the impact assessments are being gathered, and as you have requested, we are going to be trying this year more than ever before, I think, to consolidate those into a single view of if there are any particular parts of the community who are being impacted on particularly adversely. That's work in progress, but hopefully for the January report, we'll be able to bring more back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Any last comments?
Officers are working hard on those so that we'll have a full complement to be able to discuss at OSC in January.
Okay, well, in that case, can I thank again everyone who's done the work on bringing this budget together. It is a huge amount of work that starts almost as soon as the last budget has been completed and runs throughout the course of the year. The 11th, it gets harder and harder to find ways that we can do that don't impact on our residents. And I'm very sad to say it looks like there is no sign out of government that story is going to end next year or the year afterwards. So my thanks to everyone that's done that. We will continue the right thing to do for our residents, for our country, and to achieve the kind of economic growth that we're going to need coming out of this pandemic. But we will come back in January with an updated budget. Overview and Scrutiny will have the chance to go through that line by line, and in February we'll bring forward our final budget proposals next year. So are we happy to agree this paper and the recommendations set out in them? The recommendations are set out on page 16, and we've got 12 recommendations set out there. Are people happy to agree, recommendations 1 to 11, which are for Cabinet?
Agreed.
And I will agree recommendation 12, which is for the leader. So I agree that recommendation. Which takes us on to the next report, back to Rebecca again for the Housing Revenue Account Indicative Rent Setting Budget Report.
So this one is a fairly short report as well. And actually this is joint between me and Leo, so Leo might want to add something afterwards. But this report just sets out our indicative budget for next year's HRA and sets out our initial thinking on how that will be spent. I know that this has a completely separate consultation process that will be now kind of followed through, and I imagine that there will be some amendments here. But it's particularly worth noting that obviously COVID has also had huge ramifications for our tenants and homeowners. You know, we maintain and manage 53,000 rented, leasehold and freehold properties across the borough. That's not an insignificant number in any way. And and we know that a huge number of those people are really suffering at this time. And so what we have done is we have suspended arrears recovery procedures. We've granted a number of rent waivers, and we are looking at ways to be able to provide further support to those who find themselves homeless and those who need further support through the council's community hub. But this obviously has a knock-on impact both on the areas in which we are able to spend and on some of the ongoing programmes of work that we have previously but also to be able to carry on with much of the work that we are doing to manage and maintain our estates. Leo, I don't know if you want to add anything as well.
You covered most of the bases, just to really encourage any tenants and leaseholders who are watching to help us make decisions in the final instance. There's a webinar on December 15th with a lot of interactive polling around key decisions that we're making here. So just encourage their involvement.
Thank you both. I think that last point is really important. This is a document that we consult the people who live in our homes on the rent setting in here, and that's a really important principle for us as a council. I've got 3 cabinet members indicating, although I'm not sure if they're all new hands or older hands, but Helen, you were first. No, old hand. Alice? Also an old hand. Steph?
Mine is a new hand, and it actually leads on to the one about the webinar and the consultation, so it's a good segue into that. So obviously in previous years it used to go to all the area housing forums, homeowners council and tenant council, which obviously are no longer around. I suppose it's not concern, but I just want some reassurance on the fact that those residents who are not able to access digital ways of consulting with us are also included in this, because there are a lot of people in our TRAs who don't have access, are not comfortable with digital formats, and therefore may be excluded, and we do need to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate. I'm also concerned about the paragraph that said that, paragraph 39, which said that obviously those forums which took place before the 15th of December, that the webinar would be mentioned. It wasn't mentioned at the North East. Concerned that that's already not happened, and can we backtrack and go back to all those attendees at that meeting to ensure they're advised of this webinar, because it's really, really important that there is consistency, because if we're saying something in a cabinet report, we have to do it in that, because we're going to be agreeing this report today as well. And the other thing that would be really good to know is that normally we collate all those we used to collate it from all the different areas, and there used to be sort of, and then how that will be collated this year, because you could see in different areas sort of different priorities, and there was always and always has been and always will be sort of controversy around garage fees. That's always been the case, and we've had in the past gone back and actually amended some of that as well. So I suppose really it's about some clarity around the how in-depth this webinar will be, how in-depth that analysis of the data will be, and how we're going to get those opportunities out to residents. Because I think the whole thing about the whole resident engagement thing was to try and encourage more people to get involved. And I do understand the situation with COVID, but I'm worried that just one webinar will lead to less involvement and feedback.
Thanks, Steph. I think I'll go back to Leo to respond to that one.
All very good points, Steph. I think that's information we'll get over to you separately, but needless to say, we need to promote that webinar heavily and make sure that all attendees of all housing forums get proper notice of it. It's over a week away, but certainly noted.
And Michael, did you want to come in as well?
We'll make sure that we do exactly what Councillor Pollock says, and also on Councillor Cryan's point about going back to the people who've already been at the first area housing forums, we can get a note out to those people just to make sure that they're alerted about it as well.
Thank you. I mean, we obviously have a well-established communications mechanisms to all of our people who are actively involved in tenants and residents associations and many others. So I'm sure we'll be using all of those to get this information out. If we could just provide some details on that in the minutes when they're published as well, and what that was as well, that would be very helpful. Okay, with that discussion agreed, are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report, which are on page 48? We've got 7 recommendations there, on page 48 and 49. Are we happy to agree those?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. Item 12, the next on our agenda, is the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan, December 2020 draft. Another really important piece of work. Old Kent Road is clearly the area in our borough that's seeing the most change over the coming months. I think we had the really good news over the last couple of days that the Secretary of State has signed off the safeguarding rule implementation for the extension of the Bakerloo line, which will allow us to legally secure the key sites needed to deliver the Bakerloo line extension. And both myself, Heidi Alexander as the Deputy Mayor for Transport, and Damien Egan as the leader for Lewisham have put out our statement welcoming that change. But this paper sets out our planning framework. And Johnson, if you would like to introduce it for the Old Kent Road.
Thank you, Chair. And to give some context behind this, both area in 2016, 2017, that led about the council developing an area action plan for the area to ensure that actually the growth that was developed on the Old Kent Road worked for the local community. That looked at ensuring we delivered the social housing that was needed and meeting the housing need. It looked at ensuring that we didn't lose the character of the Old Kent Road in respect to the light industrial space. And it also looked at how we're ensuring both public open space and also additional jobs, and set bold commitments in terms of the number of new jobs that we wanted to see, an additional 10,000. That led to 2017, the most recent proposed version of the AAP. Since then, we have seen some significant developments and some significant outcomes. It's important to note that the AAP, the Old Kent Road AAP, has the highest number percentage-wise of generally affordable homes being delivered in London of any area action plan, at 38% being approved. Important to know that takes us well on our way to the 5,000 social homes that we all want to see meeting the housing need of over 3,500 people on a housing waiting list in and around the area. We've also seen significant new jobs. We've also seen approvals of new open spaces and approvals of also light industrial space, and a commitment to see no net loss of industrial space and also no net loss of employment space as well. All that being said, it's important to recognise that we've always been clear as a council and as an administration that the AAP was a working document, and we always wanted to strengthen it and wanted to be in a place where it was responding to key questions within a local area. So I'll highlight 3 or 4 areas very quickly before Juliet or others might come in. So firstly, there was a key question in respect of how are we ensuring that we went further in respect of both amenity space and making a family-friendly area. So in this proposed version, a key focus is making it a people-centered AAP, and we badged it under connected communities. And what that means is ensuring that we are delivering on doubling the amount of open space AAP proposed version, 30 hectares by 2045, but recognising specific areas in which we can go further as well, such as Livesey Park, in which we can further enhance space as well. For the first time in any of our area action plan, we've embedded our commitment to responding to the climate emergency and committing to having a net zero carbon development across the AAP, which is a significant step forward. We've also identified the importance of conservation. So we've identified 5 new conservation areas along the Old Kent Road stretching from the north part of the Oak Road further down to the south as well. As Councillor Williams has highlighted, our commitment to the Bakerloo line extension continues, and welcome the news over recent days, but we've gone further and the Prime Minister as well, who has backed it in terms of making sure that they deliver on the Bakerloo line extension and see effective funding as well. And then the final couple of areas which really believe it's important is our commitment to young people and education as well. Our commitment both in respect of 2310 Kent Road, a dedicated space where we're working with the youth advisors to be able to further advance engagement and also look at delivery of the youth strategy as well. Our commitment working with both schools right across the Oak Road in terms of a further two primary schools and also F3 provision as well, and further capacity in primary schools along the Oak Road as well. And also across the life of the development, committing to a state-of-the-art youth facility to respond to the local area and respond to an evolving youth strategy as well. And finally, one of the big questions that has always cropped up is our commitment to height and being absolutely clear in respect of what our approach and our policy is on height. So we further clarified on our tiers. So many members will know in previous iterations, tier 1, which is the highest tier, was 30 stories and above. That has been reduced to 20 stories and above, but being absolutely clear that we would like to see exceptional design in line with our commitment to family-friendly development and also additional open space as well. Tier 2 is 16 to 20 stories and tier 3 is up to 16 stories as well. So I will cut it short there because I'm conscious that I've gone through quite a number of points, but I'm not sure if Juliet, Colin or others will want to come in as well.
The only comment I'd like, the only comment I'd like to make is that the consultation is until the 5th of April, and it's obviously really difficult times for consultation at the moment. So if anybody, so we're really keen to consult, so to just raise that, you know, any ideas or information that you can give us about consultation would be really helpful. And
that's a really point. And just to highlight, so that will start from January and that will be in line with the new Southwark plan as well.
Yeah.
Already showing real strength, particularly in terms of the consenting schemes with a much higher, as you say, proportion of genuinely affordable housing, including lots of social housing in the area, and keeping employment space, keeping in light industrial space on the road at the same time, in the area at the same time. Evelyn.
Thank you, Johnson, and thank you for the work that has been done in the AAP. I think for myself and my colleagues, we know there's huge changes that's going to happen on Oak Road, and it's always been important for us to make sure that local people benefit from the regeneration that is happening around them, and they should feel that they are part and parcel of this change and not that it's been done to them. So I think for me, my only advice would be that when we do consult and when we do engage with a community, that we do it as, you know, as extensively as possible, and we make sure that everyone has a say in this. I welcome the commitment to youth activities or youth facilities within Oak Road, and this is something that I think has been long since missing from the Oak Road, and you know, myself and my colleagues are definitely, you know, up for working with you on that. I think for me, I've got two points to make. I think I've always raised concerns about height, and I'm glad to hear the kind of slight changes that's going to make on height. And I think it's really important to realize that passionate about that we really look into how or what we are creating on Oak Road for families. I think my question, which has partly been answered by Kieran, is about the Bakerloo line. We know there's been, you know, increased concern about the viability of the Bakerloo line, and whether that's going to impact the regeneration. And obviously there's kind of soft commitment to it, but how confident are you that we will get a full backing to the Bakerloo line on Earl Kent Road?
Thanks, Stephen. Let me come on back on that point, and then we'll come back on all the questions as well. But, you know, the Bakerloo line is a key bit of infrastructure, not just for Southwark and Lewisham, but for London. I think the arguments for it stack up very clearly in terms of delivering homes, in terms of delivering jobs, in terms of being part of rebuilding London and indeed Britain's economy. Clearly, it has been delayed by COVID, and it has been particularly delayed by the fact that the government have chosen to politically play with TfL's finances. TfL, world-leading transport infrastructure organisation, one of the best in any major city, government refusing to provide a long-term settlement to settle that, and that's clearly not their situation, and has delayed a proper discussion about funding the Bakerloo line. I think it's really, really good news, however, that the government have taken the step to safeguard the stations. That puts in place legal restrictions that limit what can be built on the key sites needed to deliver the station, that needed to deliver the extension, and the only reason to do that is if you're going to build the line. So I think, you know, that is government acknowledgement that this is a project that needs to happen, but we clearly then need to secure the funding to make it happen too. Johnson, do you want to come back on the other points as well?
Yeah, so I guess, and you know, absolutely agree, and it's important to recognise the role of local councillors right across the Earl Kent Road in respect of constantly reflecting local communities' voices and constantly challenging when necessary in terms of making sure that we get the right possible scheme. And as you quite rightly say, Councillor Koto, it's important that we do develop family-friendly both schemes, but also ensure that we have the infrastructure, the social infrastructure that goes to support that as well, whether it be school places, whether it be park and open spaces, whether it be youth facilities, jobs, or whether it be our wider commitment to younger people and older residents as well. And I believe that the amendments that we are proposing gets us further down the road as well. Just to you know, add to and build from what Councillor Williams was saying, absolutely agree in respect of the commitment to the Bakerloo line extension. And it's important to recognise with the Deputy Mayor joining Councillor Williams and Damien on that, is that it is a firm commitment from TfL to the future of the Bakerloo line extension. And wherever you've seen over years, whether it be the Northern Line extension, the Jubilee line extension, there has always been challenges along the road. I think our position as a local authority needs to remain resolute in support of our local residents. We need to remember, in the most recent consultation, 90% of local residents want this to be delivered. So this is not something that we are out on a limb on. We are representing our local community. So I'm absolutely confident that we will see the Bakerloo line extension be delivered for the reasons that Councillor Williams has also just said in respect of the safeguarding of the site as well. And we will play our part in terms of going out and building those partnerships with elected representatives and also local boroughs as well, neighbouring boroughs as well.
Thanks, Johnson. I've got 3 more members of Cabinet indicating, so I'll take them all together and encourage you to keep your questions to the point. So I've got Helen first, and then I'll come to Leo and Jasmine. Helen.
Many thanks, Johnson, for this report. And I know that we will all welcome, particularly the strengthened commitments under housing, particularly the commitment to as well. So really welcome that. My question is actually on the delivery of the kind of private side and that piece. Can you outline what levers we have as a council to ensure that new builds is fully occupied through planning policy or otherwise? Thank you.
And Leo.
Thanks, Kieran. Helen took one of my questions, so that's one less. And thank you, Johnson, for this report. I'm really pleased in particular to see many of the really bold commitments that were set out in the Old Kent Road Social Regen Charter find their way in here, not least that bold commitment to meet the entire housing need of the wider Old Kent Road area with the social and other affordable homes that are being brought forward here. I just wanted to ask as well, and well, in addition to Helen's question, which has been taken, when it comes to making the case, which we've been commendably really resolute in advancing the Bakerloo line, that we just remind government that it's historically and comparatively unusual for TfL to be so heavily dependent on fares, and for infrastructure projects like this to be so heavily dependent on planning gain from development. That certainly wasn't the basis by which the Jubilee line was extended, or historically other bits of the tube network were extended. So just a kind of plea that in continuing to make the case, there are bits of progress that we're making, that we flag that historic and comparative anomaly.
And Jasmine.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to Johnson and Colin for their close work and collaboration with the education team on this. I just wanted to try not to make a point about consultation, but just to remind you that there have been so many uncertainties, first with Brexit, then the pandemic, around any planning around education and school numbers. And likewise, we're going to have a discussion about the youth strategy. So great to see the aspirations in the work on education and youth in this piece of work, but we have to remember that we have to have close consultation with whatever comes out. See, I'm making the point, consultation about consultation. Whatever comes out of this, we need to work hand in glove with the education team and of course the youth team, which is in a different team now, led by Rebecca and team. So we have to make sure that any decisions are close collaboration with those teams. But thank you so much for raising those aspirations and putting them in this report.
Thank you, everyone. Johnson, if you'd like to come back on those questions and points with your officers and sum up.
Yes, I'll address some of those points, and then I'll look to Juliet or Colin to come back on any, and then we'll briefly sum up afterwards. Firstly, Councillor Dennis' point, I think your question is absolutely important, and it gets to the heart of actually many of the frustrations that people have with development across London, actually, and it's a frustration that I share, and I know colleagues share, in respect of private homes being unoccupied and sometimes seeming like ghost towns. Now, of course, the local authority, we have the tools at our disposal in terms of council tax, and we have the tools at our disposal in respect of ensuring that if a scheme isn't built, then being able to look at what can be done in respect of both planning policy and also what more tools that local authorities can have. But this is a significant issue, and quite frankly, not to sugarcoat it, local authorities at the moment, local planning authorities at the moment, just do not have the tools as much as we would like to be able to enforce it. But absolutely something that we are looking at to be able to ensure that we are seeing private homes occupied. I think the biggest tool that we do have at our disposal, and one that I am proud that we are using, is making sure that a larger percentage of these schemes are generally affordable. And the fact that we are seeing that actually the AAP across London is one of the highest, it seeks to address that point, but definitely something that we will continue to work on. Councillor Pollock, your point in respect of making the case for TfL funding, I think it's really important to recognise that TfL are significantly reliant on income from fares, and they saw, following guidance set by national government, a 90% reduction in income as a result of people not taking public transport during the height of COVID over the last few months, which has significantly hit their budget. And it's important to also recognise that £700 million was taken away by the previous mayor, who happens to be the Prime Minister, agreed with the government at the time, a Conservative government, to remove the operational budget of TfL as well. And that is an anomaly in terms of TfL Transport Authority in a major economy not having significant operational grant from a government as well. So as you quite rightly report, Councillor Pollock, it's really important that we fundamentally look, and I know the Mayor of London is really keen to stress this point, we fundamentally look at how TfL is funded and to bring it in line with other leading economies, to have transport effectively funded by national government as well. And then finally, the point Councillor Ali has raised in terms of consultation, that is always important. And we're really pleased that Southwark was the first authority to have a development consultation charter, really ensuring that when you're consulting on planning documents and consulting on planning applications, you go further as well. But we cannot rest on our laurels, and we need to ensure that we're not complacent. So we'll welcome any thoughts in terms of how we engage with specific groups such as educational institutions and also younger people more widely as well. Juliet, Colin, I'm not sure if you want to add anything at all.
But possibly just on the point that Councillor Dennis raised about can we, through the planning system, require empty private homes not to be empty, and we did take some advice from John Gorst about this, and his advice to us is that within the current planning legislation we can't achieve that. I mean, as Councillor City said, the Mayor does encourage marketing of private sale homes to be in London and in the UK to avoid sales to foreign investors. But we can't, and under the current legislation, require privately owned homes to be occupied. So we have checked that out since we did the briefing. On the other hand, I would say that I think probably the market for private homes in Old Kent Road would probably primarily be a London market. So in other opportunity areas, I mean, it does vary, but our best estimate is that and talking to developers, is that they are targeting these homes to a London market rather than necessarily foreign investors. So we remain reasonably confident that they would be occupied either by the owners or that they would be rented out. So that there would tend to be less of a kind of homes without lights kind of experience in the Old Kent Road.
Thanks, Colin. I mean, these are really important points at a time when there are so many people struggling to have a home that's right for them, or indeed to have a home at all. We're absolutely committed to doing everything we can as a council to make sure there aren't empty homes in our borough. And we've talked in the previous item about charging a higher council tax for people who leave their homes empty. We indeed have also been proactively contacting all homes where we know they've been empty for a significant period of time to help and support those owners to get them back into use, and indeed to encourage them to rent to people who we know have been homeless in our borough as well. But we need to use all the tools we can. If we can't use the planning tools, we will use others. I think on that note, I really welcome this report. It's a really important next stage in taking forward a very ambitious plan for the Old Kent Road, and indeed in listening to what residents said about how we can improve the plans on the Old Kent Road. So this then goes out to consultation in January, I think you said, Johnson, for 12 weeks, did you say? Was that? Yeah. So really encourage people to get involved in that consultation in the new year, and to let us know your thoughts on whether we've got the details in here right, and if there's anything we can do to further improve the plans for the road. And my thanks to the team who've done all the work to develop this draft. So on that note, are we happy to agree recommendations 1 and 2, which are set out on page 68 and 69 of the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. And I'll agree recommendation 3. Alice to introduce on community investment plans and the allocation of local community infrastructure in Southwark. Alice.
Thanks very much. Yes, this is the first set of community infrastructure plans using the community infrastructure levy. Obviously, we have got a commitment to ensure that regeneration works for our residents, and part of that is ensuring that local SIL, how it is used, is determined by residents. A consultation or engagement process was carried out to get suggestions from residents, which informed these plans. Over 1,000 project suggestions were received, and then these were reviewed and discussed with ward councillors. As you'll see in the report, just to emphasise that the criteria for local SIL funding is for strategic projects that benefit whole ward areas and communities. And you'll see that the ideas presented range from improvements to parks and community buildings to the public realm. And there's quite a lot of detail in the report, but it's worth looking through at some of the excellent projects that have come through. Just a couple of slightly reference in the report that the feasibility study should extend to a different area, which Councillor Cryan might want to pick up on. It was just a question whether we needed to note that now or whether that can just be done as part of the process going forward. So yes, I would just ask Cabinet to support the report, which make sure that it's working effectively.
Thanks, Alice. I've got lots of hands on this one. So we're probably not going to take time to have everybody's questions. So I'm going to go to people who haven't asked questions recently first. So Rebecca.
Thanks, Kieran. So it was both a question and a comment, really. I'm really delighted that we've kind of got to this position where we are able to confirm these SIL applications today. Specifically in my ward, I know that Councillor Seaton has also joined the meeting today so that he can of SIL, and whether that will be something that we will be looking to maintain, or whether it's something that we'll be looking to kind of get wards working more closely together on some of those issues that might cross ward boundaries as well.
Thanks. Steph.
Thank you. It's just Renfrew Street and beyond around that, because that's the better route. And I just wanted to know whether we can amend that, needs to be amended at this meeting, or we can just agree this report, part of the report, and it can be actually part of the feasibility anyway. So it was just a bit of clarification. And if there is an amendment, I just wanted to formally propose it.
Okay, thank you very much, Steph. I think I'm just going to take those two questions on this item because we've got a lot to get through on the rest of the agenda. So Alice, would you like to come back?
Sure. I'm sorry, I should have said John Abbott's on the call as well. Yeah, Rebecca, totally. I think obviously North Walworth decided that their fourth theme was about tackling antisocial behaviour, and I think that is one of the benefits of this process, that it is up to wards to define what are their priorities, which can then shape the proposal. Glad we've been able to find a way to address that. In terms of the future engagement process, so what's proposed in the report, this report, is that a report will come to Cabinet within 6 months to reflect on the lessons learned. That's definitely not kind of unpicking what's been decided so far, but we just want to, while it's fresh in our minds, take a step back and see if there are ways to improve that process. And I definitely agree with you on cross-ward working, sorry, as obviously we know that there are different amounts allocated to different wards, and I think our projects do not respect ward boundaries necessarily, so where we can work together to implement those strategic projects, then I think that would be great, and something definitely for the next part of the process. I think I can see there's a comment in the chat from Dorian about the amendment does need to be proposed. So, right.
Okay, thank you very much. So at that point, who would like to propose the amendment?
It's in my ward, so it should be me really, shouldn't it, at full?
Yep, go ahead then, Steph.
So yeah, I think it's fine as it is. I just think the amendment that we should really be seeking is under the project description is just to delete via Clack Street and just have it as creating a new pedestrian route to and from Canada Water Town Centre, Albatross Way, to and from Albion Street, with wayfinding interventions to strengthen and highlight the route. I think then that gives the feasibility the option to look at what the best route would be, rather than commit it to a route which already the local traders and the local school are saying isn't the best route.
Are people happy with that? That sounds like a sensible amendment. Okay, so can we agree that amendment? And then can we come back to the recommendations? So the recommendations are set out on page 83. And we've got 3 recommendations set out there. So can we agree those, please?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. I'll take us on to the next item. So the strategic review of youth services. Jasmine, would you like to talk us through this one? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to bring this to Cabinet. The youth review, we just need you to approve it so that we can get on with the delivery. Just a few things really. The review's in a great place, and a massive thanks to Rebecca, who's on the call, Rebecca Towers, Aileen, Catherine, Tina and Tia, who I think is on the call too, and also for their amazing work on this. And a big thanks to Councillor Okoto and Councillor Loring, who were the previous Cabinet members, and I've inherited a lot of their hard work. Okay, we're in a good place. Southwark it's very important. It's a youthful borough, large diverse population of children and young people who make over 20% of the population, nearly 50,000 children between the ages of 11 and 19. But we're also the borough of the most deprived population of young people and children in the borough. And we know we rank the second highest quintile in England for deprivation. Our vision, which you can see before you in a nutshell, is to ensure that all our young people have positive lives now and in the future. And we want them to live happy, secure, and enriched lives right through the transition to adulthood. Okay, very quickly, the review. That's where we've been and that's where we're going. We've got before you, you can see an excellent mapping of services. You can see the pledge for a consolidation of finances. We've got a good outline of governance, and we have had outstanding engagement. You don't have to take that from me, because we've actually won an international award for our ethnographic research with young people. Okay, the recommendations are included. This is very much about getting your approval to move on to the next phase. The vision is for you to agree is a set of objectives. Some of the things that I wanted to pick up, which are quite important: I will chair a new officer member-led task force to look at a brand new service, a sure start for teenagers. We will investigate a new state-of-the-art building to co-locate some of our our existing youth services, but to be a beacon in the borough. We want to consolidate our play and youth grants, including Positive Futures, to make sure the money is consolidated but reflects our ambition of youth services. And we want to look at new forms of youth organisation to be very inclusive. We're looking at a youth parliament or anything else our young people see fit in best organising. And we thought a youth parliament would be very good, to be very inclusive, to involve children, from all backgrounds, including young carers and people, known to social care, not in education or employment. So, that's our pledge. If there's time, Leader, we've got the youngest person in our team here today, and we wondered if you wanted to hear a few things about our award-winning research from before we moved on, but I'll leave that with you.
Thanks, Jasmine. Since you said that, we welcome hearing that. We haven't got very long on this agenda though, so please keep it short. If you'd like to introduce them, that would be great.
Towers and Tia, really. I just wondered if to just introduce Tia as a youngest member of our team, and you know, the person who was a leading force in our research with young people.
Hi Tia, if you could just give us a couple of minutes, that would be really good to hear from you.
Did she make it on the call?
I'm fearing that she hasn't been able to get in. It's such a shame. No. Sorry about that.
No problem. We welcome here. Look forward to hearing from her another time. So I've got one hand raised on this one, Steph.
Sorry, that's an old hand.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really important report, Jasmine. Sorry, Alice has got a hand. I'll come to you in a second, Alice. Before I do that, we've had a couple of questions about live streaming of this meeting today. So people. We are recording the meeting, and that recording will be available afterwards. But that's the reason for it not being live streamed today, and we'll post that on social media in response to people's comments on that as well. Alice.
Thanks so much. I think it's a really brilliant report. I just wondered, obviously, it's great to see the reference to the work on the Brandon estate, so that is youth-led, and definitely the commitment to kind of learn from what young people are doing there. I think the Southwark Young Advisors are absolutely brilliant. They've done a brilliant job there. So just wanted to say that. Just one quick question. Obviously, young people is not a homogenous group, and we know some young people will be easier to connect and engage with than others. So just to kind of, just any reassurance or thoughts on how we are using different communication channels to take the conversation where young people are, rather than expecting them to come to us.
Yes, great point, Alice. I think that is a golden thread that's run through this report, really. Hence, you know, we won an award for our commitment to that, you know, and we've used many different methods to engage young people. And I think in order to go forward, we want to make sure that we help young people set up whatever they need, whether it's a mayor or a youth parliament. But we want to really crank that up in order to make sure that the golden thread thus far, which has been about consulting young people on the Brandon all over the borough, you know, is actually permeates the next step, really. We've done everything in terms of the budget, making it possible, the aspirations, which we've heard from Johnson about a state-of-the-art building. We want to make sure that nothing goes forward without young people's say-so and approval. So I hope that's reassured you.
Thanks, Jasmine. So really important report, and I think that the fundamental principles in here, that this is work that we'll design with young people, is really important. The commitment to make the positive futures work that we've been developing over the past years, part of our bread and butter and mainstream for the future, are really important. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's been involved in that work, including thank you to Evelyn Akoto as our cabinet member, who's led setup of that work brilliantly over the last couple of years. And a really important ambition to look at how we get the right provision for our young people. So are we happy? I think there's one change to the recommendations that we'd updated in here.
Yes, yes.
So that's a change to recommendation 2, to the establishment of a new offer and member joint working group chaired by the deputy leader and cabinet member for children, young people and schools. The group will bring together officers from leisure and children's services to oversee the establishment of a sure start for teenagers. So with that one change to the...
Agreed.
Great, agreed. Thank you very much.
Leader, just one point. Next time you see us, we will be with young people. I'm sorry it didn't work today, but I promise you next time we will be. You'll hear from young people themselves. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. We look forward to that. And perhaps we'll go to them. So next item 15, Gateway 2 contract award approval for Southwark Highway Professional Services contract. I think that's to Catherine, is it?
Thank you, Leader. I'll be quite swift with this. I know it's on the agenda for the second section of the Cabinet session this morning, but I wanted to take the public opportunity to provide my thanks and gratitude to all the highways teams in recent months and the contractors. done a phenomenal job under extremely difficult and exceptional circumstances. This contract sets out a new procurement approach that was agreed originally in December 2018, and it is for the procurement of our highways and professional services contract through a Gateway 2 approach. Our current contract was first agreed in 2013, and this new gateway builds on the experience of that, and in particular the past 5 years, which have been nationally recognised as being extremely successful in terms of national benchmarking and our performance. The new Gateway 2 will see a structure that allows the contracting to be split into 3 lots, and these are broadly structures, highways and drainage, and that offers a more nuanced and responsive approach. It is with the benefit of the experience of the current structure, which saw 2 different lots allocated to 1 contractor, that we move to a recommendation in this report to see the 3 lots allocated to 2 different contractors. It's always allowed us to procure under the correct EU procurement strategy, but we've been able to offer and encourage a tender process out to smaller companies with this sort of splitting of the lots into 3 ways. And we're allowing for that development of specialisms in particular practices and fields to compete. So I'm very pleased to be able to put this recommendation to you, and in relation to detailed questionings in the second section of this meeting later on, I'll follow up on that. But I just want to put on record my thanks again to the Highways team and this procurement strategy, which I think will allow us to go on to deliver and a successful highway structures and drainage response to the borough's needs and build towards our low traffic Southwark agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Really helpful introduction. This is some of the bread and butter of being a local authority, making sure we keep our highways maintained and safe. I think, is that an old hand, Jasmine? I think it might be. Yeah. In that case, can we agree? Sorry, this is a report that we're agreeing the recommendations in the closed part of the meeting. So we will come back to that later. And again, for those who are unfamiliar with this bit of our process, where things have financial decisions linked to them, we are not always able to discuss those in public, and so those elements about the financial decisions we discuss in private, people get to see the full detail of what we're looking at when the final decision happens at our closed part of the meeting later on. So that takes us on to the next item, which is the draft housing allocation scheme for consultation, and I'll hand that over to Leo to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Williams. So we have in front of us a new housing allocation scheme, the first in over 6 years, that commits us to consult in the new year on the allocation rules around who gets the access to council homes. This is all about trying to orient these rules in such a way that we are building strong, sustainable communities formed around our council homes, while also providing a fair, transparent, consistently applied and always easily understood set of criteria for residents who are bidding for those homes and for housing association partners as well. But it's also worth saying that this is all in the context of growing acute housing need in the borough. We have over 14,000 households who are on our waiting list for a secure and affordable home. We've seen a sharp spike in applications during the pandemic. There are many overcrowded, homeless families, many with welfare issues that need to be settled through their housing. This is also in the context of unemployment having doubled during the lockdown, as well as growing rent arrears and the continuing uncertainty with the government's post-pandemic evictions freeze in the private rented sector. So it's in quite a stark context that we're considering this report. It's also worth emphasising too that in spite of this, while we are aiming to balance the needs of supporting residents with the most acute medical and welfare needs and those who are overcrowded or without a home, we're also wanting to ensure that we guard against an increased residualisation of council housing, and we maintain its status as providing for all stages of life. So the report itself, the proposed scheme that we're bringing forward for consultation, does a number of things. It increases the priority that we give to victims of domestic violence, as well as for care leavers, foster carers and families adopting children needing larger homes. We also have a number of proposals that are intended to help homeless households find new ways of settling down, which Councillor Dennis has been leading on Further to this, we are, for new council homes, introducing a greater degree of flexibility to better reflect the local circumstances around those new homes, partly to strengthen the local community benefit for new homes, but also crucially to maximise that wider chain of benefit that we achieve for every new home that comes into circulation. Worth adding too that alongside this new scheme, we're jump-starting a number of key initiatives to help enable more lettings through the system, as well as to promote awareness among our residents of the widest range of affordable housing options, as well as to make the system a lot more user-friendly. So these include a series of localised right-sizing initiatives to better connect overcrowded and under-occupying households, as well as the re-procurement of the home search and mutual exchange platforms to make them a lot more user-friendly, proactive and capable of showing the widest range of affordable housing options. Just to quickly conclude, Kieran, on this, I would also encourage all tenants and partners to contribute to this consultation. I just want to put on record in particular a big thank you to the many officers who've contributed to this report. It's a complex machine of a proposal, but in particular to Ian Swift, who's been tireless in his work as an activist officer trying to change the housing system that we're operating in. So I'll leave it at that. Any thoughts and questions?
Actually, I've got a question from Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. And it's not a question, just a very brief comment based on the housing strategy. Welcome all of the work from the team. I think it's important to recognise that there are those that often say that actually, can we respond to the climate emergency and also meet the housing crisis and respond to the housing crisis as well? And through a number of policies within the housing strategy, I think it's important that we highlight the ways that as a local authority we are doing both. So whether it be the commitment to ensure that we're exploring more and more renewable energy as part of the housing strategy, whether it's a commitment to net zero carbon homes as part of the London plan that's recognised in a housing strategy, or whether it's the commitment to net zero developments, which including in the AAP as well. I think it's really important that we highlight that actually our commitment to responding to the climate emergency can be married with our commitment to responding to housing need across the borough.
Thanks, Johnson. So importantly here, where this is a document for consultation, and we're encouraging residents. When does the consultation start, Leo?
It would be in January, so pretty soon.
So we're encouraging people to really get involved in helping us shape this policy. It's such an important policy for shaping how, as has been said, who gets to move into council homes in our borough with a long waiting list. We want to make sure that that's done in the fairest possible way, that gets the balance right between all the different competing needs that people have for housing, and also making sure we build communities that really work for people as well. Steph, I've got one question from Steph and then we'll move on to the recommendations.
It was just really to say, I think this is a really good piece of work, and it's good to see it finally come to Cabinet. I think we started on this when I was Cabinet for Housing. I know, Kieran, you've sort of had part to play in this, and Leo as well. So, and I just want to say thank you to Ian Swift and the team for the amount of work that's gone into this around that. I think it's a really good proposal to go out to consultation. It's really difficult to decide where you put the tiers around that and the proportionality, and I think it does strike the balance really well on where that housing need is on a very, very difficult decision when you've got 14,000 households looking for accommodation. It's just, you know, it is so difficult a decision to make.
Thank you. Well, thank you to all who've done the very hard work. It's obviously a long, complicated process of trying to balance these things up. So thank you to all of the officers who've done the work on developing that. With that, having had the discussion, are we happy to move on to agree from page 74 of the report? Are we happy to, Cabinet happy to agree those? Agreed? Agreed. And then recommendation 5. Oh, sorry, hang on, before we do that. Yeah, sorry, there is a recommendation 5 in the report for the leader, but actually that's already covered in the recommendations we just agreed, so we can just delete that one for the moment. Right. on to the next one. So Southwark housing strategy, which we'll be back to Leo to introduce.
Thank you, Kieran. No small deal, this report. This is another cyclical update of our overarching housing strategy that's been 4 or 5 years in the making. I think it's important just to state just how much has changed in the wider housing environment since the last report, not least the fact that we have declared a climate emergency, which has a huge impact on our approach to the energy efficiency of new and existing homes, not least the introduction of the Southwark Sounds Together framework that has a huge impact on so many aspects of how we manage our homes and procure services. Needless to say, also the continuation and expansion and acceleration of our council house building programme, the introduction of our Great Estates programme and the new landlord strategy that's all around promoting a new ethic of care in everything we do with our residents and our living environment, as well as giving that residents that decisive influence over how we expand and enrich council estates. And crucially, you know, the key thing, which is the Grenfell fire in 2017 that has transformed the national agenda around building safety, which was a big agenda for Southwark, certainly before then, but has certainly brought a lot of it to the fore with the Building Safety Bill coming through at the minute. I would say that the main thing that has changed in this strategy compared to previously is that we are now framing our approach to housing as moving towards high quality, secure, affordable and sustainable homes for all. What we mean by that is that we aim to have strategies in place for all tenures and types of housing, as well as different types of housing need, from older people's housing to temporary accommodation standards, our approach to empty homes, which will be a lot more aggressive, as well as new initiatives on the private rented sector in terms of a new licensing scheme and a renters union to strengthen tenants' voice and influence. I think it's also just worth adding too that these commitments and actions are very cross-cutting. They cut across all departments, all portfolios throughout the council, and are also part of a wider partnership that we have with housing associations, the voluntary sector, health services, police, developers, landowners. And this is all about generally improving the quality, safety and environmental impact of all tenures of housing in our borough, as well as that promoting that renewed ethic of care in the landlord-tenant relationship that will promote the health, well-being and economic resilience of our residents. So I'll leave it at that.
Fantastic. Helen, you had a question or comment as well, as I'm sure you want to add.
Just comment on 2 things that I wanted to highlight. And again, thank you to the officers who've done so much work on this. It's a really substantial piece which is going to guide a lot of decision making and work going forward. 2 things I just wanted to highlight. As Leo said, this is about work across the council. It's not just in one department. Under Principle 3 in particular, we talk about the importance of a housing first approach. And I'm really pleased that we have taken that line. As a council, we're really committed to developing and delivering on housing first. Acknowledging the importance of a settled home for people who might be struggling and the importance of bringing together the support services they need. The second thing I just wanted to highlight is our work with the Gypsy and Traveller community, which is also noted separately within the report. The strategy notes the work that has already been done on the Ilderton Road site to bring that up to scratch in relation to fire safety and improvements. And the council remains committed to delivering on the fire safety work that's required across the sites. But in addition to that, we're also developing a wide action plan with the Gypsy and Traveller community that will be looking to enhance the relationship between the council and the community and really I guess increase the engagement and partnership working there. So I just wanted to highlight that piece as well, which we'll be taking forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. I mean, this is a hugely ambitious strategy. There's an awful lot in a very short document here that we're looking to do to address every aspect of housing in the borough. And I'm delighted that we're agreeing this today. I want to take this opportunity as well just to mention something that we announced yesterday, and just to contrast with what we're doing in Southwark and what the government are doing. So the government last week, I think, introduced some new rules allowing the deportation of rough sleepers who are not UK citizens just because they're sleeping rough. As a council, we're saying we will not collaborate with that kind of activity, and we will do all we can to support those rough sleepers to find homes and to rebuild their lives. And I think that's the spirit that we will approach this whole strategy in, and I think that's a really important part of what we're doing in Southwark. Okay, on that note, I think if we can move to the recommendations on this report. So there is one recommendation for Cabinet on page 191. Are we happy to agree that recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed. And there's a recommendation for me that I also agree as well. So let's take us on to the next item, item 18, acquisition of 13106 residential units on Crimscot Street. Is that Rebecca?
It is, yeah. Thanks, Kieran. I'll be very brief. So I'm really delighted that we're able to bring this report this morning, and it helps to contribute to our commitment around delivering 11,000 council homes. What's really notable about these is that we are looking to acquire 13 of those at social rent, and predominantly 3 and 4 bed properties, which is something that is really brilliant for us to be able to do in such a central location as well. And I know that we'll pick up this in the closed session as well later.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. Really good opportunity to, as you say, buy some more council housing for the borough. This is again an item that will come back to the final decision in the closed session, because it's about the cost that we're paying for the homes that we'd be buying. So I shall move us on to the next item, which is the review of the void disposal strategy. And I think that's back to you again, Rebecca, is that? Oh no, is that?
I think it's me, actually.
It's Leo, is it? Leo, yeah.
So the report in front of you is an update of our void disposal strategy. This is all about the thresholds that we set for and the rules that we set around whether empty homes, void homes are used to release sums to support wider housing investment. Those in such a way that the receipts are specifically earmarked for housing investment, and particularly for council homes, and those receipts are always delivering a significant increase in habitable rooms compared to the home that we are disposing of, as well as ensuring that there is a like-for-like replacement that is identified from that void disposal. And this is all about trying to just make sure that we've got the resources in place to deliver on our commitment to build 11,000 council homes and meet the housing needs of our residents.
Thank you, Leo. I don't see any questions on this one. So again, another really important step in making sure we get it right in providing council homes for our residents. Are we happy to agree the recommendations on this one, which are on? I've lost the page. Page 215. Recommendations 1 to 6. Happy to agree those.
Agreed.
Agreed. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. The next report, item 20, response to the Housing Scrutiny Commission report on housing repairs. I think Councillor Gavin Edwards, who chairs the commission, did want to be with us, but unfortunately he's not able to attend today. But Leo, would you like to talk us through the report?
Yes, I'll be brief, just to put on record my thanks. Sorry, I've got to mute that. My thanks to the Housing Scrutiny Commission. It was a really detailed report that got right under the bonnet of the repairs service and made some really pointed recommendations, all of which we are accepting and agreeing on. And I think I hope that the report will act also as a bit of an update, half-time update on our repairs improvement plan, more details of which we'll bring to Cabinet in future months. Some of the points that that we're agreeing to include residents signing off of repairs, a new public KPI on unresolved incomplete repairs, where we have prolonged issues that cause people a lot of anxiety, the crucial use of what happens next cards, just to make sure that we have continuation of communication with residents, and the multi-skilling agenda as well, to make sure that we've got the right trades and the right tools coming to homes when a repair call is made. Not to mention all the improvements for integrating the call centre better with the repairs service. So that's just a little bit of it. I'm not going to speak to every recommendation, but it's a really welcome report. And again, my thanks to the Scrutiny Commission.
Thanks, Leo. And agreed. I mean, this is just another really good example of the quality of scrutiny that's happening across the council, bringing out very practical recommendations on how we can see improvements for residents. So if we could agree the recommendations. So this item was on supplemental agenda number 2. Agree that? Agreed. Okay, so let's go on to item 21, corporate customer access strategy. Alice, would you like to introduce that for us?
Yeah, sure, and I've got Richard joining me as well. So I guess firstly, like lots of people, I just want to say thank you to all the staff who've been on the front lines responding to queries and helping residents during COVID and before that. Again, I think they are some of the unsung heroes, answering the phones, responding to emails 24/7. As the report this strategy really is looking at definitely some of the lessons we've learned from COVID, the importance of providing excellent service, responsive service, flexible services that meet residents' needs. It is designed as a corporate strategy to simplify the way we provide customer service. It's underpinned by 3 core principles. One is that we want to be a digital first council. Part of that is obviously there is a cost implication. I mean, just to know, one face-to-face transaction costs £10, a phone transaction costs £3, and an email transaction costs 8p. So there is a very clear difference around that. So we want to look at how we provide excellent digital services end-to-end for residents. The second principle is ensuring that we deliver excellent services through listening and responding to our customers. So a key part of this strategy will be how do we ensure we are getting feedback in the most effective way. And the third point, which I think is probably the most important, is a commitment to leave no one behind. So even if we are moving, increasing digital services, we are recognising that not everyone can access those for different reasons, and we want to ensure that everyone, no matter who they are or where they live in Southwark, can access services. I guess just to mention a couple of things the strategy will do, just to give you an example, it will set out maximum response times and service standards that people should expect. That will be part of the next step, developing those, ensuring that all customer facing staff have the training that they need to provide excellent service, and lots of other things. The next steps in terms of this strategy will be developing a comprehensive action plan to really bring to life those principles, and of course a key part of that will be ensuring equalities impact assessments on any decisions that are made. So it's a really important strategy. It's the third one that we've produced that will inform our approach across the whole council to how we engage with residents. So I'll stop there, and we haven't got much time. I don't know if Richard wants to add anything quickly.
Thanks, Alice. Michael or Richard, any brief additional points you want to raise?
Just to comment, Councillor, that this is the third strategy, each one aiming to improve on the one before. The main difference with this one is it's going to be a cross-council, not just the customer services functions. This will be delivering standards across the council. And whilst we always seek to deliver good value for money in our customer services, as Councillor MacDonald said, the importance here is that we're going to make sure that we continue to maintain good telephone services and face-to-face services for those residents who need them. And finally, just to express my gratitude to all colleagues who contributed to this strategy, and of course to Councillor MacDonald for advice, guidance and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think given time, and I don't see any hands, we'll move straight to agreeing the recommendations on this one. So they are set out in supplemental agenda number 1 on pages 1 to 3. Sorry, on page 4, rather. Yeah, sorry, 4 recommendations on pages 1 to 3. Are we happy to agree those 3 recommendations? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. Item number 22, response to the Education Business Scrutiny Commission report on procurement, accessibility and social value. Rebecca, are you responding on this one? Is Peter Badudu on the call with us as well?
He's not. He
no.
messaged me earlier to say that he wasn't able to make it.
Yeah.
But we,
so Peter is the chair of the commission, and I know would have wanted to be here if he could have been. But Rebecca.
Yep. So I wanted to thank Councillor Badudu for the excellent work that was undertaken by the Commission. What we have done here is not be able to set out specifically how we will necessarily address all of these recommendations in the first instance, but myself and Councillor Cryan have been working closely together on some essentially kind of our approach to being able to take forward these recommendations over the coming 12 months. So we think there's a huge number of really important issues raised as part of that inquiry, and at the moment the capacity in-house to be able to deliver on the recommendations in the way that we would like to. So what we are proposing is that there would be a dedicated position to support taking the recommendations forward, and that's been factored into our budget proposals for 21-22. But what we essentially therefore want to be able to do is create that baseline of what our current position looks like, identify and understand the gaps that exist, and then really take forward activity that really addresses the recommendations that come out of this report.
Thanks, Rebecca. I mean, the recommendations are really helpful in setting out how we can use our procurement, the things we buy as a council, to really ensure that that delivers both local jobs, but also business for local businesses, including businesses who would perhaps normally be underrepresented, be they black-led businesses or others. So I've got 3 hands here. I'm happy to take all 3 if people keep their questions very short. So Leo, then Johnson, then Steph. Leo.
Thanks, Kieran. Just to say very briefly, it would be amiss to not mention the fact that there are aspects of this excellent report that we're already acting on. Just yesterday, the Council, in partnership with the London Housing Consortium, launched the expansion round of our architects framework. These are 20 extra spots on our framework, which has a value of just under £500 million, specifically targeting architect practices from much more diverse backgrounds than we normally see in the profession. So I'm really pleased that we're beginning already the work to tackle those sectors and professions that have poor record on diversity, and I'm looking forward to seeing much more being pursued elsewhere as well.
Thanks, Leo. Really important bit of work that we're moving forward. Johnson.
Thank you, and to also recognise the response to recommendation number 9, which highlights the support to local businesses as part of section 106, and in the response, and thanks to Doreen and the team for working on this. The response is that we will be reviewing our section 106 and SIL as well. Goes without saying that small businesses particularly have found the last year a very difficult time. So anything that we can do to be able to support them as part of our approach to a strong local economy through the planning system will be really important.
Thanks, Johnson. And Steph.
Yeah, as Rebecca said, we've been working on this because some of these recommendations do fall within the local economy team as well, and it is a really great piece of work and report. So just to say that some of this does fall within the recommendations we've already agreed as Cabinet as part of Southwark stands together in terms of business support. We're looking to do an audit of what business support is available throughout the borough as well within the local economy team. So some of that work strands that we're doing around that, the economic renewal plan and community wealth building framework, will absolutely encompass part of this as well.
Thanks very much, everyone. I mean, really good examples of where we've been picking up this work as we've been going through, and another great scrutiny report that I don't think has set out, again, really practical recommendations on how we can improve the lives of the people in our borough. So with having noted all of those comments, can we agree the recommendations which are set out on page 226? And we've got 2 recommendations there for us to agree. Can we agree those? Agreed? Excellent. Let's go on to the annual workforce report. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thanks. We are late in the day on this one, so I'm hoping that people will have a chance to read this at another point in time if they haven't already. But this is our annual workforce report. It should be noted that the report covers the period March 2019 to April 2020, so actually only covers the kind of the very beginning of the impact of COVID here. But I think it's really important that we thank every single one of our staff for their continued work